For those of you who don't already know me, I am a poet and theologian living in the inland Northwest. Currently, I'm at home in the middle of the day because I am sick. And so I thought, well, I've got a little bit of time on my hands, and I never did a proper poetry reading or kind of like book launch for my most recent poetry collection. And so I wanted to take some time to do that and to also, showcase some other poetry that I have written and that's coming out in the not too distant future. So, as always, I make these decisions rather last minute. um, and so, who knows if anybody will actually show up to this live. If you do, awesome. If you find this later, that's excellent. So, just really quickly, just again as a shortwave introduction, like I said, my name is David Mosley, and I am the author of The Green Man. This is my debut collection of poetry, and it came out with Resource Publications back in June of 2021. This year, I will have my second book of poetry coming out with Resource Publications called Liturgical Entanglements. And so today, what I thought I'd do is just, a short, I don't intend for this to go on for too long, a short video reading through some of my poems that that I've written in this book, that'll be in my upcoming book, and in a third collection that I'm currently working on. So first, let's start with The Green Man. Now, this, if you're unfamiliar with The Green Man, you can find figures like this one here. This is, by the way, this book cover. The main figure here comes from a woodcut done by a friend of mine, Tyler DeLong, who is just an excellent artist and woodworker. And I definitely recommend that you check out his work. He's now opened up his own shop called Eremos, and I will put a link to that when I'm done with the video in the description. But the Green Man is a figure that you can find all throughout Europe, especially in medieval churches. And so it's a figure that kind of captured my imagination, and I wanted to write some poetry about. And this kind of evolved then into a greater collection of primarily nature poetry. So I thought I'd start then with reading of the titular poem, The Green Man, and then, we'll kind of bounce around to a few others. So, The Green Man, if you get a copy of the book, that poem, the title poem, appears in the summer section. And so I'm going to turn over there and we'll do a reading. Also, I have to apologize for the kind of nasally sound. Frankly, there's a good chance I have that lovely disease that's going around. And so if I sound a little off, that's why. Also, thank you to the one person so far who has joined me live. Hopefully, you are not disappointed by being here. So this is The Green Man. Effoliating foliage, he haunts his local habitation, the tutelary spirit ripener of wildest blackberry, protector of the bee's humblest wants. From cloves to honeysuckles, from elms to maple, he cares for the wood as if it were his garden. The iridescent lights of night are starred in his eyes. He gathers food for his greenwood table. And once in ages now so long forgotten, his greening power helped even us to grow. He was our teacher and our dearest friend. But now on the new wine we are besotted, drunk on this technological flow. Still, even in the gales, he will not bend. The Green Man, like I said, is a figure that has really stood out to me as one who represents our kind of relationship to creation, to the rest of nature. And so I want to read a poem that's a little technically out of time now. We're well past the Christmas season, but I wrote this poem called Greening the Church, and it's kind of my winter Green Man poem. I tried to write one for each season. And this one gets at this whole notion of why do we bring greenery not just into our homes at Christmas time, but why do we bring it into our churches? And so this poem is called Greening the Church. We bring into the church the evergreen, fresh boughs of trees that last all winter long. And as we place them round, we sing a song about peace on earth, goodwill to men. We set them up to decorate, it seems, to bring some festive Christmas cheer along. The boughs remind us of the ancient Yule log our ancestors once burned for the year's end. But more is happening than might appear. We bring the Green Man into the church, and not in stone, but in the trees themselves, to winter with us at the end of the year, to bring with him not just pines, but elm and birch. Creation comes to see the baby dwell. And I very much think that there is this, as the Apostle Paul says in the book of Romans, that all creation groans, right, in expectation. And I think that that's part of why the Green Man became such a prevalent symbol, is that recognition that it's not just you or me that longs for the return of Christ, but it's everything, right? Everything that exists is ultimately longing for the return of God. I want to read another one of the winter poems since it's currently winter. This poem that I'm getting ready to read, I wrote on a challenge. I was part of a writing group, and we set ourselves a challenge to it was a series of phrases dealing with architecture. And we set ourselves the challenge of writing a poem based on one of those phrases. And so one of the phrases that we chose was the quality of light passing through ice. So this is my poem, The Quality of Light Passing Through Ice. All your rays gleam upon the snow and turn it into a many-jeweled land. Clouds appear as the wind begins to blow, but you will not die. No, you will take your stand and shine across the gleaming land so bright. The snow begins to feel your distant warmth, and in your blaze I am bereft of sight, so I cannot see the icy crystals form. But when my sight returns, I see them there, piercing toward the ground like cruel claws. But in your light they take a different air, and look now more like crystals, and give me pause, to look not only once, but to look twice, at the quality of light passing through ice. If you happen to get a copy of The Green Man, which you can get at all bookstores, anybody can order it. It's unlikely you'll find it on shelves in most places, but even at your local independent bookstores, they will be able to order this. So if you don't want to go through the big giants like Amazon or Barnes & Noble, you can order it at your local independent bookstore. If you are here in Spokane, Washington, where I am currently located, you can actually get a copy of The Green Man at Auntie's Bookstore in downtown Spokane. And please do, if that's something that you're interested in, because if those of you who are in this area, if you buy copies of the book here, then they'll actually restock it, and maybe even stock copies of more books that I have as they come along. I just want to read a couple more poems out of this book, and then I'm going to switch over to some of my other poetic projects. So as I was saying, if you buy a copy of this, you'll find that it's laid out into a few sections. I have a 7-poem sequence on the 7 days of creation, as laid out in Genesis at the very beginning. Then a section kind of on loss, followed by the 4 seasons, and then a selection of poems about various saints and other, what I've called other songs of the church. And so I'm going to read one more poem out of the kind of main section, and then 2 poems from the final section, the Songs of Saints, and then we'll move on to some of the other work. So one of my autumn poems is a poem called Smoking a Pipe on a Cool Afternoon. And those of you who have been with this channel for a while know that this channel began very much as a pipe smoking channel. I think one of my first titles for this channel was the Historical Piper, or something along those lines, and then I changed it to the Enchanted Pipe Smoker. And now it's just my name. But I am an avid pipe smoker. You can't see them out here, but I have various pipes with me around. This is a Savinelli that I've had for a very long time. It was a gift from my father. Unfortunately, I can't use any of them right now because I have some kind of sickness, and so that's unfortunate. But this is a poem that I actually got to write while smoking indoors, which was, especially when we were renting, something I didn't get to do very often. And so this is called Smoking a Pipe on a Cool Afternoon. Like Celtic knots, the smoke unfurls and gives the air an illuminated quality. Breathed in, blown out, it dies and then it lives. It gives the room a kind of sublimity. The cherry heart comes from fire, but air keeps the fire alive. A balance must be struck. Calm, deliberate, like prayer the fire must be fanned. Give in to trust and let the smoke like incense rise in rings, in swirls and curls like kells now come to life. And see how like a thurible it sings of a world with airish spirits, rife with things unseen and so unheard of whole. All this and more pours from the poet's bowl. And that was a poem I wrote reflecting just on seeing the smoke come out indoors, which is, again, something that in this day and age you don't get to see very often. All right, now 2 poems from this final section, from the more liturgical, more prayerful section, to kind of segue us into some poems from my new collection that'll be forthcoming this year. This poem that I'm about to read is based in large part actually on an image from, both from an image, a painting by the artist Daniel Mitsui, who I'm working with, and hopefully will have one of his prints as the cover for my next book. And also a story from the life of Saint Columba. So in the life of Saint Columba, there's this story about how he's walking along, he needs to cross a river, but all the people are afraid because there's this monster living in the river. And so he's got to banish the monster. And the monster just happens to be in the river Ness. And the monster gets banished to the local lake or loch. So this is my poem, Saint Columba and the Loch Ness Monster. You sent young Lugne to entice the beast, and he went without a moment's hesitation. He swam into the river's fluctuation. All who watched thought you sent him to be a feast. The hungry serpent swam and roared and reached the swimming boy with hungry salutation. All those who looked on watched in fear and frustration as you, Columba, looked on in holy peace. For you knew how to read the book of creation, what songs or signs would send the creature running. By the grace of God and by the holy rood, you sent the creature to its new habitation. Pictish heathens stood, their minds all wondering. Who is this Christ? We may have misunderstood. All right, and finally from my collection, The Green Man, I want to read the very final poem, The Holy Grail, which plays on a theme from the Russian Orthodox theologian Sergei Bulgakov, and this notion that what the true Holy Grail is. So this is my poem, The Holy Grail. Who held the holy chalice that caught his blood, blended with the shimmering water of life, catching it, this strange admixture rife with all the active potency of the good? And who was washed in this outpouring flood, made into the bridegroom's newfound wife, washed away from pain, from death, from strife, and into the paradisal garden wood? It was the earth, who received the blood and water. And the Green Man carried it through the flowers, the trees, through all living things without fail. He bore the chalice. He became the altar. Christ spreading through everything by his greening power. And so the earth became the Holy Grail. And so, that's a small mattering of poems from my collection, The Green Man. I do hope that if you liked what you heard from that, you'll check it out and consider getting a copy. I've said that you can get it from any bookstore, and you can order it from any bookstore. But I actually still have a few copies myself that you can purchase from me, and copies purchased from me, while a little bit more expensive than buying them from your local bookstore or from Amazon or something like that, because I have to take into account shipping and tax. Nevertheless, come with an added benefit of not only will they be signed, but they include an extra poem called The Green Man Beckons, which I wrote for a potential other collection that I may work on someday. So this new book that I have coming out, Liturgical Entanglements, will be out sometime this year, and hopefully I'll be able to do a proper, launch and book signing and all that. Hopefully COVID will have finally settled down. But it's mostly a collection of poems going through the church calendar. And then there are a few others that are attached to it. I have a sequence looking at the Stations of the Cross, 5 sequences in the 5 mysteries of the Rosary, and a sequence on the 12 parts of the Apostles' Creed. Today, I'm going to read a couple of poems from the Ordinary Time section, because that's what season we are currently in, and then I'll pick and choose a few others to read. So this first poem that I'll read from Liturgical Entanglements is called Jacob's Ladder. Ascending and descending the angels fly, going about their secret ministrations, rejecting as unworthy our adulations, showing themselves only to those with eyes made clean, to eyes that have been purified. They work behind the scenes, an undulation of hidden waves, of hidden murmurations we cannot sense, no matter how hard we try. But if you can find the stone of destiny, the rock on which poor Jacob laid his head, the stone on which he slept, on which he dreamed, the earth will seem as liminality. It teems with life, it lives and is not dead, and every single creature is more than it seems. That's a poem obviously reflecting on the scene of Jacob out in the wilderness and having his dream. This next poem I'm going to read is called The Milky Way, and it's in large part a reflection on one of the lines in George Herbert's poem Prayer, or usually called Prayer 1. And so this is my poem, The Milky Way. Herbert said it was a kind of prayer, the galaxy in which we spin and live. Looking up, he saw what you had to give. He saw it through the liminal, luminous air. For him there was no light-polluted layer to obscure his sight, which allowed him to believe that the whole of God's creation is alive in him and shining with celestial flare. But I can barely see the stars at night, let alone Phaeton's streak across the sky. So how am I to use it as I pray when it has been obstructed by our lights? But then I see the pictures by those who try, and I can say I've prayed the Milky Way. I just want to do one last kind of poem. It's actually 3 poems together for the Triduum. So for those unfamiliar with the Triduum, they're the 3 days that lead up to Easter. So this is what are called Holy or Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday. These 3 poems are the 3 days, like I said, leading up to Easter Sunday, and I've written them in what's called a corona. And corona, as we all know by now, means crown, right? That's why the virus is called that, because the crown shaped the virus. But corona in poetry means that the last line of each poem in the sequence is the first line of the next, until you get to the last poem, where its last line is the same as the first line of the first poem. And so this is a short, I have multiple corona sequences in this collection. This is a very short one. It's a 3-poem corona sequence on the Triduum. And so I'm just going to read these back to back. But know that the first is for Maundy Thursday, the second for Good Friday, and the third for Holy Saturday. He came to give us a different kind of life, but first he had to give a new commandment. He showed us power doesn't lay in might, but in one who's dressed in humble habiliment. His mother said that God will exalt the lowly, and so he knelt to wash our sin-stained feet. He lifted up the bread and wine made holy before he turned our death into something sweet. A new command I give to you, he said, that you, my little children, will love each other. He gave us the simple gifts of wine and bread so we might be joined to him as sisters and brothers. He humbled himself to overcome our loss, as he was raised up on the bloody cross. When he was raised up on the bloody cross, he took on the wage of sin, our wage of death. The sky went black because the light seemed lost, as Jesus gasped his final dying breath. This is the love he commanded us to show, a love that only seeks the other's good, a love that causes the Spirit's wind to blow and changes bread and wine to spiritual food. Now I must learn to love just as he did, and walk upon my own dolorous way. I have in me a light that should not be hid. It is my role in life, the gospel play. But he was still descending down beyond. He had to go to the lands without a sun. He went down to the lands without a sun to make his final gospel proclamation. The devil thought his victory had come. He didn't understand the plan of salvation. Death could not contain the one who is, and lost so many captives he thought he'd gained. Hell was harrowed, he destroyed the city of Dis, and so the sting of death was thus contained. But dying Christ has built for us a bridge, a road that no longer leads us straight to hell, a road that leads us far away from the edge, through a different kind of fire that makes all things well. But still we had to wait for another sunrise, for him to give us a different kind of life. And this, I think, segues nicely to the last couple of poems I want to read, which are from another work that I'm currently working on. This is, as many know, the centennial of Dante's death. Dante Alighieri, the famous Italian medieval poet who wrote the Divine Comedy, a epic poem about man's journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven, for his own reclamation, but also for ours. And because of that, I decided that I wanted to, well, technically, I should say last year was the centennial. We're now moved beyond it. But I decided that I wanted to write a series of poetic reflections in the same style that Dante wrote in, which was called Terza Rima. And I wanted to do one poem in a 10-line poem in Terza Rima for every canto of the Divine Comedy. I'm now a little over 70% done with that project. I've completed the entirety of the Inferno, the entirety of the Purgatorio, and I have begun the Paradiso. And so I'm just going to read the first canto of each book. So Canto 1 of the Inferno, Canto 1 of Purgatorio, and Canto 1 of the Paradiso. And that'll wrap up my time here with you today. And again, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has been here with me live throughout all of this. If you want to learn more about me, my work, my poetry, you can go to davidrussellmosley.com. And again, please do consider buying a copy of The Green Man and Liturgical Entanglements when it comes out. And if I finish this project on Dante's Divine Comedy and find a publisher for it, please consider buying that as well when it comes out. All right, so here's Canto 1 of the Inferno, my reflection on it. And I have also lost the mountain path, and fallen in the forest dark and grim, enduring what so often feels like wrath, but is just love that's boiling over the brim. Falling off the mountain of delight, the sun still rising and not yet growing dim. My sinner's eyes are blinded by its light. So I must find another path to tread, a path of hellish darkness and of fright, yet one that will bring life back to the dead. Here is Canto 1 of the Purgatorio. Rising up, I find a different way, with many different stars that shine to guide me. So bind me with the reed and wash my face. Like Venus, I ascend out of the sea, ready to be rid of that hellish hollow, ready to find the love I could not see. This is the path of love that I must follow, the mountain path that will at last leave me purged, so I may ascend still higher like a swallow, following that divine and holy urge. And now finally, Canto 1 of the Paradiso. All things enjoy a kindly inclination to return to their true source and home, and I can journey home with Christ's salvation. O true sun, you burn away the gloam, and by your light you draw me further in and further up into and beyond the dome, the spheres that radiate your light and spin. It was my will that drew me down to nothing, my will that kept me trapped inside my sin. But turn my will to you, and I rise to being. Again, thank you, everybody who joined in. Please, again, if you're interested in my poetry, please consider buying my book. Come check out my website. Many of my poems have appeared all over the place on the web, and I've also written for places like Ecstasis Magazine, U.S. Catholic, and others. So if you're interested in anything that I've written, plenty of places where you can go check that out. I really appreciate everybody who came today, and hopefully sometime this spring or summer when Liturgical Entanglements comes out, and hopefully when COVID is something that isn't impeding our way of life as much anymore, I can do an in-person event and do a book signing and all that fun stuff. So thank you again. God bless you all, and please feel free to reach out and let me know what you thought. All right, thanks everybody. Bye.